All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining today. This is the BNB Investing webinar. We're going to be having these once a month on the first Tuesday of every month. Most of you that have attended these before know that this was usually sponsored by a local Atlanta REIA group, which has now gone national. And so South Atlanta REIA is now called REA USA. And basically is going to do educational programs for all real estate investing, different angles, and the short-term rentals and Airbnb is kind of our expertise here. I'm happy and excited today to have Leonard Joseph join us from Airbnb, and we're going to go over a lot of the things that we've kind of seen that's been happening with the pandemic, learn some new things that are coming through the platform. And we'll be dedicating some time to questions and answers, and really look forward to jumping into it. So without further ado, I'll let Leonard kind of give a brief introduction, and then we'll just get started with kind of more of a question and answer format, and welcome your questions as well if you want to put it in the Q&A box, and we'll get to them that way. So Leonard, thanks so much for joining us.
Rich, thanks for having me. This is great, and to all of you, I just want to thank you guys for being with the platform and being hosts at this such critical time. As some of you might have saw last week, we released the report on travel with some of the insights that we have seen and that we anticipate to see moving forward. This is a US-based poll that we did in December. And what I thought I'd do now is just go through some of the findings and some of the things that we have heard anecdotally and we've seen in our findings, and share those with you. And then Rich is gonna take the full report and share that with you all as well. One thing which is not a surprise that you all probably have noticed in your own lives with your friends is Americans today feel more isolated now than they've ever felt before. 53% feel less connected to their extended family. The same percentage feel less connected to their friends, and a higher percentage of 56% feel less connected to their local communities, and similar percentages feel less connected to Americans as a whole and the world in general. People are just overall feeling lonelier and emptier. One of the things that we have discerned is people miss travel, more than anything else, more than going out, going to bars, going to restaurants, going to sporting events. What people have said they significantly miss is the pleasure of travel. And even the notion of traveling is something that brings people happiness when they just think about the idea of traveling again. 54% of the people who were polled have said that they're determined to travel again. They either have bookings or are currently planning on traveling in 2021. Which we find very encouraging. And of that group, a sub-demographic is 72% of people 18 to 29 say they have intentions of traveling, and from 30 to 49, 60% say that they have intentions of traveling as well. So those are sort of very interesting numbers for us. But as we know, the type of travel that people are focused on is different and informed by these times. Right now, what we're hearing from people is they don't miss business travel. They don't miss business travel at all. But what they do miss is really connecting with friends and family. And they find that to be really, really important to themselves. And, an interesting question that was asked is 52% of them said they rather leave their cell phone at home as opposed to going to the traditional tourist spots and getting content for their social media. We've seen maybe the fad of the selfie stick come and go. I don't know, but people are really hungry to travel, but they're really interested in connecting with others, which we thought was really interesting. Um, you know, another piece of this which really stuck to me is we asked people about when they think about their first trips, what are some emotions that they think about, and they're really sort of focused on these first couple of trips. They want them to be relaxed. They want them to be relaxed, comfortable, and safe. The three words that most was reflected in our surveys. They again, they want to see family. They're prioritizing seeing family. There is also in this data some trends where they want to have new experiences, but by far connecting with family was the first tier. New experiences was the second highest rating, and then the third was experiencing something new, which is a flip from what we've seen in prior years. We see that affordability still runs extremely high as one of the key determining factors, but something that we see also in these numbers that are extremely eye-opening is nearly 3 in 10 Americans who earn under $50,000 a year say that they have intentions of traveling this year, which just gives you sort of the depth of how large the potential traveling public will be. Finally, sort of the two other things that I'd like to share that came out of this report was that the vast majority of people, over a third, said that they want to go to a destination where they would feel safe, where people are being vaccinated, or that testing is widely available, and at the very least, urgent care facilities are available. People knowing just how dangerous this virus has been, they're being very mindful of that, and wanting to make sure that they're in a location that has proper precautions have been taken into account. The final data point that I don't want to make sure, I want to make sure doesn't get lost in all of this. This is something that we'll probably study some more. Is for travelers under the age of 50, 56% of them said that they are much or very likely to use a platform that enables them to search for green accommodations or accommodations that use alternative energy. We've seen a steady increase in that number, and it's a number that we'll probably track more. Knowing that that guests are looking for sustainable trips, sustainable listings, environmentally friendly listings, has been something that we've seen inklings of before in our survey data and our interviews with guests. But as that number starts to pop more and some of their behaviors change, that's something that we'll continue to look at. Those were the points on the report that I wanted to share. Obviously, when you get a copy of the full report, you could dig in a little bit more there. Myself, Leonard, I'm on the community team. This is a newly formed team that Catherine Powell had put together. She's the head of hosting at Airbnb. she wanted to make sure that there was a team that was really focused on you all, our host community, and thinking through the pain points and the challenges of hosting, and having sort of an internal team inside the company who would focus on pain points and how to deliver the best services for our host, and really sort of cement that partnership that we have. Um, I work with the whole team, but one of the elements of the team that Rich and I got to work very closely with is Colin, who is one of our leaders in our host leader club program. And it's revisiting some of the work that we have done previously, but really sort of building local leadership, volunteer leadership in various communities where hosts can get together, fellowship, and really share their experiences and capacities the same way that you all do here. And it's a program that our founders are very invested in, and it's something that we hope to grow pretty exponentially over the next 2 years. Rich, I'm happy to take any questions you have or anyone else has at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we dig into the community program, which I'm excited to learn a little bit more about, on the study that was done, was that more kind of a survey study that was done, or was it, and if so, kind of what were the numbers, and where was it? Was it a worldwide thing or just in the States?
Great question. It was a domestic survey that was done for adults in the United States, 1,036 interviews. It was done over a 1 month period, and then we're looking to supplement that in the future with another survey that we do in Southeast Asia, as well as another one in Europe.
Okay, and so I actually will send a copy of that report to everybody that's attending, and then that way everyone can take a look at it and see that information, because it's definitely helpful as we are managing guest stays to understand kind of the needs and the different nuances that are occurring there. One other thing, just from a pandemic standpoint, I know that a lot of us have recognized that the number of listings on the Airbnb platform have gone down, since the pre-COVID time, and just wanted to know, just from your perspective, how do you view that? Do you feel like that's going to grow back up to where it was? I mean, I think in the city of Atlanta, for example, we used to have a little over 10,000 listings in the city, and now I think we're a little over 7,000. So there's about a 30% deduct in the number of listings. So obviously that helps with supply and demand for the folks that are still actively listing. But just wanted to get your take on that on a larger scale, and kind of what your thoughts are there.
Sure. One, you guys know this better than I do, but hosting is really hard. Hosting has been hard. Hosting continues to be hard, and we're very cognizant of that. It's not only hard because the expectations of guests are changing. Guests are looking for more flexibility. And I know that has been challenging for hosts. Guests are expecting, 100% when it comes to cleaning standards. That's expensive. And then there are price pressures that also exist with demand. So, for our standpoint, we understand that with hosting being challenging, that it may not fit into some people's lives right now, but we are so encouraged by these numbers and some of the search numbers that we see on the site that hosting will come back in a pretty profound way. And what I think we're hoping to do is make sure that the people who are currently on the site, we're doing everything we can for them, trying to break down whatever barriers we can, knowing that these are difficult times. And then for the folks who, stop hosting for whatever reason, make sure that they know that opportunities are out there. And, the great thing about smart investors, as Rich, is that when they see opportunity, they know to go for it. And what we could do is be the best platform that we could be. We can make sure that our guests know that the quality and value is still here, and we think with that demand, supply will not be an issue.
Okay, well, that's good news. One other interesting thing that I think everybody would like to get a sense of, you had mentioned, and I'm not sure if it's a part of this report or another study that was done or survey that was done, but like the top 2 or 3 things that guests were most requesting in terms of the listings they were looking for. I think that might be an interesting topic for everybody to.
Yeah, so this is something that we have started to do and start to make available, and we take a look at what people search for, and we're very mindful of that, and we've started to break down that information locally for folks, and we've been sharing it with our host leaders, and they've been sharing it within their groups. I could speak generically to some of the things that I found sort of very interesting in the US. Not a surprise to anyone on this phone: Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi. If you don't have strong Wi-Fi, you're not in the game. But secondly, because we have seen more family travel, and because we have seen more extended stays, people wanting to be able to have their pets come along with them. And you all have to think about what that might mean for you, and cleaning fees and pet fees, but know that demand is out there. One which, Rich, when you and I were speaking not too long ago, people who could smoke in the units, fares is pretty high, particularly in some areas in Europe, but also some places here in the United States. It is, I can't, I don't really have words for it, but I go where the data tells me.
Well, a lot of us can attest that whether they're able to or not, we're getting a lot of folks that are smoking in our units anyway. So,
yeah.
I'm not surprised that that's kind of on the wish list, so to speak, of certain guests.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I don't know where jacuzzis and water beds and hot tubs fit in, but we're definitely starting to see some interesting requests. And obviously, as people stay for longer periods of time, we're seeing requests for more photos of the backyard, because as I said, people are connecting with family, people are connecting with guests. Maybe staying in inside spaces is available. Sometimes showing off your backyard, showing off the outdoor space maybe was not so much of a premium a year or 2 ago when you guys did your photos. I'll tell you, it's more of a premium today than it's ever been.
That makes sense. I think we had, my wife and I have 7 grandchildren. And so during Thanksgiving, we set up the table in the backyard and basically had, an early dinner outside. Thankfully enough, the weather was good and cooperated. But I can see why that is definitely something that's on front of mind for folks that are traveling.
Tent rental businesses. Who would imagine that questions that people managing Airbnbs would be getting? It's a question that we're starting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And Christine was saying Yahtzee and Jenga, laugh out loud. And To circle back just a second on the pets, because I know a lot of us, including me, don't typically allow or accept pets. And I know that we've kind of toyed around with it on certain properties that are, better equipped for it. Do you have a sense for, when people are doing searches, the kind of the average percentage of available properties that do in fact allow pets?
I don't have that specific to the US. What I'll say is this space is very dynamic. Obviously, in the United States, there was rulemaking from the Department of Transportation on service animals, which, let's just call it as it is. I think people have over the years taken a lot of liberty between pets, emotional support animals, and service animals. So the airlines have started to begin to very narrowly define that universe of animals, and and I suspect all industries and all other groups will have to sort of think about that as well. So I don't know what effect that will also have on travel.
Yeah, so I know that as a policy, as a host, if it is a service animal, we're not able to turn those guests away.
Correct.
Is it acceptable for us to require, copies of documentation to kind of back up that they are in fact a service dog or pet?
So these are policies right now that we're in the process of reviewing. Obviously, we would not want to infringe on anyone's rights, but we do know that that we've heard from many hosts, uh, you know, not having any notice that an animal, whether it be a service animal or otherwise, showing up is disruptive. And we think that there is a way to balance the needs of people who need the support of these animals plus our host needs. So there's some work that we're doing with some of our stakeholders to strike a balance that makes sense for all affected.
While we're on that topic, I think it's a nice segue into what a lot of us are probably experiencing now during COVID, and just kind of the semantics around, what's going on. I mean, for example, we had a guest that was inquiring on behalf of her sister in Atlanta that had recently been diagnosed positive with COVID. She was a student. She had nowhere to stay. And she was basically looking for somewhere for her to continue to quarantine before she could return back to her home, her home state. And so she, was already there a week. She was looking for somewhere to stay for a week. Unfortunately, the property that she inquired on had a access entryway that was shared with other guests, so we really couldn't accommodate. But would be good to know kind of what your or Airbnb's thought process is around those types of issues that come up. There's obviously the HIPAA laws that come into play with privacy and things of that nature. So would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so this is a space that we are actively engaged in monitoring. We sent a note to the federal government just the other day saying that we want to be part of the solution. We know that there is a need for vaccines and a need for more testing, and particularly there are places in this country that are rural and don't have the infrastructure to allow for that. And we have said to FEMA and to other officials that if there's a way to leverage our infrastructure, that they should. And we're open to being partners. Outside of that, I think this is a very sort of interesting space for us. You mentioned the HIPAA laws, but we also want our host and guests to feel safe. We are thinking about different ways for hosts and guests to get the right level of comfort to allow stays to occur without violating any any laws or allowing any sort of discrimination of any type. So we are working with our host advisory board, which was announced last December. It's a board of 17 hosts globally, who have been helping us think through, you know, what are the things that hosts and guests need to be successful, and to be safe, and understanding that there are many nuances. I think this is a primarily domestic group here in the United States. We've started the vaccination process. I was on the phone with a number of our hosts from the Philippines, and they said, we're 3 years out from a vaccine. We're 3 years out from a vaccine, and if being vaccinated was a requirement, you're basically telling all of your hosts to just pack up and end the business as they know it. So, and then I was also on that call was a younger host, who, bravo to her. I think she was in her late 20s. She's in the UK, and she said she's as healthy as can be. So she's at the back of the line when it comes to vaccinations. So she's not anticipating being eligible for a vaccination until 2022. And so she's very fearful. And then I had another person in Canada who was sharing their experience, where she's an older woman. She only has a shared space, and she said she is blocked out her calendar because she doesn't want to take the chance. She's waiting to get the vaccine for herself, and she is unsure if she wants anyone in her home who has not taken the vaccine. So, what we've acknowledged is there are regional differences. There are differences in terms of types of properties, that we're being asked to think about those differently. So could it perhaps be a set of rules for shared spaces that might be different for rules for whole homes, and not making any blanket statements that would take countries where getting the vaccine is a multi-year proposition, and not affect those businesses in a way that doesn't promote the belonging that we as a company believe in.
But I guess in the meantime, I think each host is kind of on their own to determine, how they want to handle those situations as they come up.
Yeah, and the great thing about our hosts that we have seen is they have just been so clear and upfront with their guests, and I think the guests have really appreciated that, and I think that has helped the communications and the conversations, frankly, that you guys broker on a daily basis.
Yeah, because I think a lot of us have welcomed, first responders and medical workers throughout this that have, in attempts to kind of secure their family, and when they're working 12-hour days, have stayed at a lot of our listings as a result of that. And I think, those types of stays are quite common. And so it's kind of the other things that are starting to come up that we're all starting to kind of deal with and trying to figure out the best way to approach it.
Absolutely.
So, makes sense. All right. So the community leader program that you touched on, how long ago did that start, and kind of what's the main backbone objective for that program?
Thank you for asking. We've always had leaders for the 10 years that the company's been around. But I think we have really never formalized the program in a way that we could truly treat our leaders as partners. So what we've done is we have always had people who have helped us out with our public policy campaigns. We have suggested to all of them, if they're still interested in serving their community as a leader, we've invited them to stay on, but we're asking them to take a more holistic view of it. We know that there's a measure of people who host not just for the finances, but because it's a community, and we thought that the way that you guys have done here, if we could continue to structure the community where hosts can learn from one another, hosts can represent one another, they can, give organized feedback to the company, but then we could really hear and learn from them. We could hear what's working, we could hear what's not working, we could hear about projects that they're interested in. We met with a number of host leaders just the other day who were very much focused in on this idea of sustainability, and really being able to demonstrate to their communities that A, they're a force for good, but B, they really want to make their communities more sustainable. And they asked us for permission whether or not they could do a neighborhood cleanup under the title of an Airbnb club, and we said, this is your club. Yeah, you could do that. And and showing your values, I think is something that's very much needed. Some people sit there and go, "Oh, that Airbnb host, those guys are greedy. They're not creating a service." And then all of a sudden, they see Airbnb hosts doing a cleanup of the block. You all are just really shrewd to survive in this environment. You need to be business people. You've written business plans. You've taken businesses from the ground up. Passing on the skill of how to balance a checkbook in today's world, that's vital. I know most people don't have physical checkbooks anymore. I'm dating myself, but what you guys can impart on the communities around you is really great. What you guys do for local businesses, is tremendous. One of the things that we were looking at just the other day is the amount of cities that have given up on their recycling programs. And we said to ourselves, what happens if Airbnb hosts and Airbnb guests started demanding that this recycling take place in various communities? And what happens if guests say, "I won't visit your city if if I'm just making this up, St. Paul's, Minneapolis, right next door to one another, St. Pete and Tampa right next to each other." What happens if they started hearing that guests and hosts say, "I don't want to be in a city that doesn't take the environment seriously"? Leaders would stand up and listen, and you all would have the credibility to help drive a conversation like that and shape your city in a way that that really is impactful, not just for generations today, but generations in the future. So if these clubs could help be a vehicle to some of that, we're really excited about the prospects of it.
And so just to kind of paint the picture for folks that are hearing this for the first time, I think the formal rollout of it is to actually have groups that are within each city or within each neighborhood or location, and be able to choose a couple of folks that take the lead as Airbnb hosts to be able to have a platform. And I think it starts with a Facebook group. That the only way that you can be a part of that group is you are in fact a host on Airbnb, and it gets pre-qualified in that manner so that that everybody that's a part of that group are actually hosts like you are, and creates an environment for exchanging best practices and talking about some of these issues that we've been touching on.
I think that's great, and that's a wonderful description of it. And this is not the end all be all. There are great organizations just like this one that should stand alongside you know, our Airbnb hosts. You know, we know that there are people who are on multiple platforms. We know that there's allies to Airbnb, such as cleaning services, such as lawn services, such as, you know, folks who manage and deal with linens. You know, these Airbnbs are not an enterprise upon themselves, but they may be the sort of the nucleus of a larger groups and associations. Those all have a place, and we should all be working in concert with one another. But really, for hosts to be able to have a safe space where they can be vulnerable with one another and ask questions, but also, you know, think about solutions that are localized and receive updates from Airbnb, but also give really quality feedback to us on what hosts are going through, what we could do to make the product better. So we're really excited about this. We have a couple 100 host leaders in the US. We have a couple hundred in Europe and Asia as well. I'm excited. I think it's next week, I'm going to be speaking to 14 of our leaders in South Africa, who have just seen a lot of their international travelers dry up, but they've been sort of excited to see Airbnb pick up domestically with their guests. But it's different. It's different catering to domestic guests as it is to international guests. Your international guests, they wake up first thing in the morning, they get their breakfast, and they're out on the road for the entire night, and then they come back at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, completely exhausted. Domestic guests, they stay home, maybe they're cooking in the kitchen, maybe they're inviting friends over, maybe there's a loud poker game going on, you know, and you got to deal with that. But then maybe they're just like, hey, can I extend 3 more days? You know, X, Y, and Z is coming into town. I haven't seen them forever. I want to stay a little longer. So there are, you know, some nuances and differences between international guests and domestic guests, and those groups are sharing best practices on how to deal with those cultural differences and how to provide the best services possible.
Makes sense. And I think some of us were involved with some of the monthly host calls that Airbnb had put on, I think just shortly after the pandemic had started. And it looks like that might have been a continuation to put the community leading program in place based on some of the feedback from some of those calls and meetings that we all participated in. Do you feel that those are going to continue to be a venue as well to have host participation and talk about different topics? And
absolutely, I feel that we learn, and our team specifically grew out of those calls that you were talking about. Brian, Catherine, Dorothy, our leadership very much believes the more engagement, the more interaction we have with our hosts, the more connected the hosts feel to the platform, the more connected our staff feels to the host, and then the better service we could create for the guest. And really, that sort of bringing the three together and working in unison is what makes this platform really special.
yeah, a lot of us really appreciated the ability to have that line of communication that typically wasn't available to us before that. So I think that was very productive and you know, a positive change and new way that you guys are doing things.
Well, you know, I say, you know, a lot can come out of a crisis. Chaos could come out of a crisis, or innovation and thoughtfulness could come out of a crisis. For our company, our hope is that it's more innovation and thoughtfulness than it is chaos. But this is definitely a brainchild of a crisis.
Absolutely. So I know that some of the participants that we have today, I'm looking to see if you guys have any questions. We are going to need to cut this off right at 4 o'clock or just before then. And so please, as we continue the conversation, have any questions that you would like Leonard to address, please put that in the question and answer box. And I apologize earlier, it's not Christine that made that comment about Yahtzee and Jenga, it's my good buddy Chris. I don't have my readers on, so I misread his name. So if anybody has any questions on anything in general or something that we've just covered, please put that out there. I think I can, if you want to raise your hand and you prefer to speak, we can go that route as well. You know, one of the things that a lot of the participants that come to our meetings, Leonard, are not necessarily already on the Airbnb platform or they're thinking about doing it, they're interested in doing it. What would you say to those folks? I mean, I usually get on my soapbox about Airbnb and talk about all the great things that it brings to the table for an owner and for a host. But I'd like to, if you had the ability to kind of talk to those folks that don't know about Airbnb from a host standpoint, what would be, the description for them?
Yeah, well, thank you. For our standpoint, we are trying to build a community of world-class hospitality, and we are trying to build a community where we are extremely supportive of our host, because all of what Airbnb is built on amazing hosting. We as a company, we think about meticulously the host and the guest experience. We are really proud of our brand. We're proud of the culture of the organization. I live in DC, and I was particularly proud of the company when, unfortunately, there was the insurrection on the Capitol, and we were hearing from our host where they said they felt really uncomfortable with potential reservations they had around the inauguration. And although it cost resources and money for the company, our CEO Brian just turned around and said, "Is this the right thing to do?" And everyone in the room basically said yes, and we did payouts to the host, so they were not left holding the bag. We returned the money to the guest and said the prudent thing for the company to do at that time was not to accept any reservations. I contrast that with other companies that didn't have a guiding light to help them make those decisions. I'm not saying it's the right decision. I'm not saying it's the wrong decision, but it because we knew we wanted to put our host and guests in the middle of our decision-making process, a decision like that became very, very easy. And others, they, obviously profits, conferences, where they had a lot of different things that weighed into their decision-making. But for us, in our guidance and our principles, it felt really clear. So, I think we're a founder-led company, and our founders were hosts, so they think about this from the hosting perspective. But as I started off, hosting is challenging. I remember, and hosts are being asked to do more and more. Rich and I actually met. He remembers this story in a very cold day in Athens, Georgia, where we were at a hearing on short-term rentals in Atlanta. It was a statewide bill that Representative Dollar, was it? who put
Yes,
the hearing on.
he's in Marietta.
And and sometimes hosts are not just hosts. Sometimes hosts have to be advocates. And you would be very proud of Rich. He was probably one of the most forceful speakers that they had that day. But also a number of hosts came out and they talked about what hosting meant for them, and they talked about why they want clarity in bills, and some great speakers from Forsyth County and Savannah. So really a statewide effort, but yeah, being a host is not easy. Sometimes you are an advocate, sometimes you are an organizer, sometimes you're an accountant. You guys wear many hats.
Definitely, definitely. Just to touch on one aspect of the decisioning around what occurred in DC not too long ago. I know that occasionally, we had similar things that were done for New Year's Eve, Halloween, locals that are under the age of 21. Those types of global decisions that are made. Does the time allow for like the host advisory board to have some input in that, or is it just kind of internal with corporate and they just kind of roll with it?
We've been learning each and every time that we have had an issue come up. There's some of these issues that we could plan that we have a longer runway on, right? Like today, we can be thinking about Halloween. Today, we know it's going to happen.
Right.
We can be thinking about, you know, Memorial Day. Memorial Day was a time where we first made cancel free, um, no penalty cancellations for hosts if they thought that a party was going to take place, and then we evolved off of that. We'll continue to evolve, and we'll continue to sort of bring the host advisory board and other opinions. We do have a really good feedback loop. Some of you guys um, who are on our platform will recognize that we have a community center. Obviously, we have our host leaders, and then we have our CS agents, who people continually give feedback to. Sometimes not the most happy feedback at that time. We get it. People get frustrated, but all of those channels we now have pipelines into all of those channels, that when decisions are made, we want to make sure that hosts are readily sitting at the table.
Awesome, awesome. So Chris, not Christine, but Chris has a question. If there are any polls or data about traveling for major events like the Super Bowl, for example.
We didn't do anything specific about major events, but we know from sort of our past history, this is a lot of Airbnb was built on major events. Our coming out party as a company was the Democratic and Republican convention of 2008. And the founding of the company was around a design conference in San Francisco. So we do know that major events play a big role in the company. That's what helped lead to part of our sponsorship to the Olympics, because we really see Airbnb and short-term rentals as the responsible and sustainable way for large events to occur. In past years, when cities made bids for the Olympics, the question was how many hotels were they going to build for that 1 month. Then to know that many of those hotels would sit at 20% occupancy for the next couple of years, where in Rio, which was one of the sort of larger events for us, I don't have the exact numbers, but thousands of hosts came online around the Olympics. and hosted and got bookings. And not all of them stayed. That some of them did the one big event and, went down to the ocean for a little bit while the events was going on, and then came home to their houses and were to never host again. But then others kept with it and have stayed to this day and have really enjoyed it and have made it a main part of their lives. So, no specific polling, but a ton of data on the benefits and the challenges of events.
Yeah, so I'm actually in Tampa now this week. We're setting up listings and getting them ready for the Super Bowl. And then unfortunately, for us, Tampa is like historically the first city to host it and also play in it, right? So that means half of the folks that'll be traveling. So that kind of like hit us on the chin, but we're taking it in stride. So I agree with you. The events are kind of a big impact with this space and with Airbnb. Quick question, and we're about to close. So if anyone has another quick question that we can take before we close, please put that in the Q&A box. But you mentioned hotels there, and there's one thing that I personally have a personal opinion about that I'd love to get your take on. There are, and I think at one time Airbnb may still be doing this, but acquiring large hotels like Marriott and partnering and providing that on the platform. And for me personally, I think there's a balance. Once you get to a certain level, it kind of takes away from the whole local experience, the local feel, the uniqueness that the Airbnb platform brings to the table. What's your personal take on that in terms of, someone that wants to go do a 400 unit building and then all of a sudden we're back to a hotel again?
Yeah, no, I what you said early on is resonates with me. One, core to our business are our host and giving amazing hospitality, giving people that wow feeling. And not to say that there are not hotels that do that. There are definitely hotels that make you feel special and can take your trip and just, really sort of go above and beyond. But the reality is most of that is done by our mid-size and our smaller hosts. They're the ones who could sit there and say, hey, it's a birthday party, where do I get a nice bottle of wine? Where could I take her on a nice walk around a park? These are things that really happen at the very localized level. So, for us, I think this year in particular for us, we want to just stay with what we do well. And another thing is right now, when hosts come to our website, they're looking for rental homes. This is our bread and butter. This is what made our name. They're pleasantly surprised when they find hotels, but this is the service you all are providing is what people are looking for. So.
All right, so real quick, I know that we're about to close, but my buddy Chris has another really thoughtful question, which
I don't know if I can do in 30 seconds, but shoot.
But yeah, so how do we successfully get reimbursement claims on smoking violations? How would you suggest?
I don't have a great answer beyond going through CS. I know that they have standards of evidence, which with smoking is really hard to meet with those standards. It's an issue that I think about a lot, just because Chris and other hosts have brought it up in the past, and I don't know.
I didn't think you had the magic rail for that. So
maybe there's a mixture of how we think about security deposits in the future.
Right.
We can think about that. So,
well, listen, Leonard, I appreciate you taking the time today. Really appreciate this, and would love to have you back at another time and kind of see how things are going with you. But thanks so much for your time today, and we welcome you back next time.
Okay. Bye, guys. Everybody be safe.
Take care.